spitting out my gum. Okay, hi you guys. I am going to start my blow dry tutorial, and I have Miss Bonnie Eckelberg with me.
Hi.
She's going to be my curly haired victim. The first thing I want to talk about is just that worksheet that I gave you guys about the 12 different hair types. I just want to go over the 12 different hair types. The difference between each of our cuticles is the size of the cortex, which is the part that's inside your cuticle, and that determines the width of your cuticle, and everybody has a different sized cortex. So if you're a fine-haired person, that means you're at the smallest size. If you're medium, then you're in the middle, and if you have coarse hair, which is kind of rare, you're at the very largest size that there is. And that means different things for moisture retention and protein and your ability to manipulate the texture of your hair, meaning if you want to straighten out a curl or make it, wavier, whatever it is you're trying to do, that all determines what the difference is between each of those things. So I put another little post on the group page of each of your hair types and each of your textures so that you know, okay, I'm fine with straight hair, or I'm medium with curly hair, whatever it is that you are. And then you can actually look on that 12 hair types worksheet and figure out, okay, I know that I have fine straight hair, so this is the type of pre-dry I need to use and finishing technique I need to use, and these are the type of products that will help me get the best blow dry I can, and shampoos and conditioners and which hot tools and even brushes. So I'm going to start out with the different types of brushes that we have, and then we'll move on to the actual hair follicle, and I'll talk kind of about what it's actually made up of and the different parts. So here's the different brushes that I have. I'm not going to do it that way because you won't be able to see. But the first brush I have is called a 413 brush, and it's actually kind of like a nylon bristle. This brush is really good for being able to smooth out really curly hair. So if you've never seen one of these brushes before and you have curly hair, this is really beneficial, especially for when you do the pre-dry before you end up finishing your hair, because it can actually help to smooth it out straighter when you start pre-drying against your skull, which is what helps it kind of straighten out to begin with. You can also use it to finish at the end, and it has a really good grip to it, so it can pull your hair a lot straighter. The second kind of brush I have that I always like to use when I'm pre-drying or even finishing is a paddle brush. And I had several people not even know what this brush was when I first started doing hair, and this brush is super important, especially if you have more tangly hair. It's got a little cushion to it, so it keeps it from pulling your hair out when you're trying to comb your hair out when it's wet. And then since it is cushiony, whenever you're pre-drying your hair against your skull, it kind of gives a little bit of a cushion so that you're not ripping through your hair, and it helps to kind of smooth that out better too. You can also finish with this brush, and it should be able to smooth out people with straight to wavy hair fairly well. The last brush I'm going to talk about is my round brush. This is the largest round brush I have, and they come in several different sizes. You can tell which size it is by the diameter of the brush, and this is also what will tell you how big of a section you can take. So if I hold this up to my head, that's exactly the width of the section that I would be able to take with this brush. It's vented, meaning it has these little holes in it, and it's made of ceramic, so it's a good conduit of heat, and it's not going to burn your hair or overly dry your hair when you're drying with it. It allows the airflow to come through the little holes that are inside the brush and to smooth your hair out even better whenever you're finishing. The bigger the round brush, the more volume you're going to get, and then based on whether you're holding the round brush straight up and down or a little bit back or way forward is going to determine the height of how high you can get that volume in your hair. I wouldn't recommend this for people with really short hair because you're not going to be able to get it underneath the entirety of your hair, so I'm thinking like maybe chin length or longer would be a good choice. And then they also come in small, medium, and large sizes. This is the extra large. So that's my little spiel about brushes, and they're very important. I would also get one of those alligator clips so that you can have something that's a little bit more sturdy to hold your hair up. I've noticed that if you don't have the right clips, then the whole time you're trying to pre-dry, your hair is just falling down in your face, and you won't be able to get a very good pre-dry that way because you'll constantly be hitting your ends instead of just the first third of your hair. So let's see, the other thing I want to talk to you guys about is actually what the hair is made up of, which are amino acids. You may not know that. Amino acids make up about 21, there's about 21 amino acids in our body, and 18 of them live in your hair, which is a lot. So when we talk about that, that sort of starts the conversation of everything else with, you know, does my hair need moisture? Does it need protein? What does it need? That's usually because whatever it is that's missing is part of what's missing in your amino acid. So the other thing I'll talk about is the actual structure of the hair follicle, which, you know, you have a strand of hair on your head, and the outside of that strand is like armor, and that's going to be what makes up, excuse me, your cuticle. And however strong that armor is how strong your hair's cuticle is. So if it's not very strong and it's kind of weak, or if it's been overly processed where it's blown open and it's stuck open, which can happen whenever you overly bleach or overly strip your hair with bad shampoos or whatever it is, it allows a lot more to come in and out of your cortex, the middle part of your hair. And then the middle part of your hair is called the cortex, and it's a lot like a sponge. So whatever comes into your hair tends to get trapped in that little sponge, and then there's certain things that can cause moisture and fatty acids and other things to be leached out of your sponge, including the actual color that's inside of your sponge or your cortex. So different things can cause that. Ammonia, of course, can pull out natural pigment, also putting in natural pigment. Hydrogen peroxide is part of that process as well. The higher the ammonia is in your color, the more damaging it can be on your hair because it tends to either overly invest itself down into that little sponge. And then, of course, if you're using a professional hair color, that's the best for your hair because they tend to have a lot lower levels of ammonia. So they're still going to do the trick. They're still going to color your hair, give you lasting color, but they also include a good barrier in that color as well. Like in the Paul Mitchell color, there's a beeswax barrier. So it kind of protects the natural pigment that's inside your hair. Let's see. Then we can talk about pH. The pH of your hair should be about 4.5 to 5.5. And this is really important whenever we're talking about shampoo, because you want to keep your shampoo that you're using sort of around that same pH. So if you're curious to see how abrasive your shampoo is that you have in your shower right now, you could actually grab a pH strip and test the shampoo that you have. It's depending on what your hair needs are. It can be a little more acidic or a little more alkaline. For example, if you needed smoothing for your hair pretty badly, it would be okay to have a shampoo that's a little more acidic. But generally, we want the pH of that shampoo to live around the same pH that your hair is, which is between 4.5 and 5.5. The next thing we'll talk about is the blow dry methods that we have, and I'm actually not going to go to the pre-dry just yet because since I have a wavy haired person to do my demo on, I'm going to start with my wavy and curly haired girls, and I'm going to talk about the diffuser a little bit. I also want to talk about blow dryers. Blow dryers are super important. They can cut down big time on your blow dry time, and they also can determine whether or not your blow dryer is able to actually pull moisture out of your hair as it's drying, and it's not just drying your hair because it's using hot forced heat air to dry your hair. So I want you guys to know that you need to make sure and have an ionic blow dryer, and what that means is that the water in your hair is positively charged. It's a positively charged ion, and the ionic blow dryers force negative ions onto the hair shaft as you're blow drying, and those ions actually grab a hold of the positively charged ions that are in the water molecules and will pull them out of your hair as you're blow drying. So you're not only, you know, putting forced air against your hair to help it dry faster, but you're also pulling moisture out of your hair as you're drying, which if you didn't know that before, that's really helpful to help your hair dry a lot faster and for your finish to be a lot smoother, is if you have an ionic blow dryer. And I'm not super picky about brands, just as long as it has a high and a low setting, and preferably a cool setting, because that comes in handy whenever you're finishing out your hair. Just make sure it's ionic. So I'm going to start on Bonnie, and we're going to do a little diffusing with my diffuser. And if you've never seen a diffuser before, you're in for a treat. It's scary. Okay.
Leaving the glasses off?
Yeah, you can take your glasses off if you want to. Oh, where's my diffuser? It must be in the drawer. Aha. Okay. All right, so when I'm diffusing, this is a diffuser. It looks like an alien claw contraption, but it's really awesome because what it does is it kind of acts like fingers against the scalp. So once I have it onto my blow dryer, I can actually kind of massage it around onto the scalp, and that helps, since I have an ionic blow dryer, it helps to pull moisture out of the hair and kind of scrunch the hair as I'm massaging it around to create volume at the roots and give it a nice finish of a curl throughout my hair. Because, you know, if you scrunch your hair and let it air dry, it'll stay pretty wavy. But this really ensures a nice wave with plenty of volume at the roots, which is usually where curly-haired clients, you know, complain that they go flat. Is like up here at the roots. I might get curly underneath, but I just can't get it up high enough up at the top. So typically before I would start, I would have shampooed Bonnie's hair with a good moisturizing shampoo. She has kind of in the coarser range, curly to wavy kind of hair texture. So we'd want to use a really gentle shampoo, something with moisture, preferably something sulfate free, a good moisturizing conditioner as well. And then Bonnie actually has allergies to anything with fragrance, so that can be kind of hard whenever you're trying to finish your hair out if you can't use any sort of a finishing product. So I am literally just going to diffuse this on her wet hair with no finishing product in it, but I would not recommend that. I would typically say use a leave-in conditioner, especially if you're a curly hair girl, because curls love moisture. And then I would use some sort of a heat protectant so that you don't overly dry your cuticle. And the reason we used heat protectants, it's not that it does anything magical, it's just that it gives some sort of a barrier that you have to go through in order to actually damage the cuticle. So it's like it sort of puts on a little scuba suit so that it doesn't get overheated when it's inside that hot zone when you're using your blow dryer. So I'm going to start with my standard sections. There are 3. That's included on your worksheets that I posted earlier today. So I'm going to grab one of my little alligator clips, and then I'm going to start putting her hair into my standard sections. Give me just a minute. Probably could have had one of those out, huh? Oh. Okay. So here we go. 3 standard sections, and this goes for everybody. Anybody with any hair type or texture. When you start your blow dry, you always want to start in the 3 standard sections. So the first section, I'm going to turn Bonnie so you can see, it's going to be right above the nape. So there will be this kind of like recession behind the ear, and you want to take that section right across the crown of the head. That's the part of the head that sort of juts out the most. And we want to pull our first section up. Like so. Okay, now if you have curly or wavy hair, you can use a towel and that's fine, but if you tend to get kind of frizzy, I would highly recommend using a t-shirt. Just grab an old t-shirt, and you're just going to want to kind of scrunch up into your hair with that t-shirt before you start your blow dry. So instead of a pre-dry, if you're going to diffuse out your hair, you're instead going to scrunch it a little bit to get some of that moisture out. And I would use a t-shirt. Or a microfiber cloth. That would work just as well. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I've got my diffuser attached to my blow dryer. I'm going to load it Turn it on and massage. Turn your blow dryer off. Move to the next section. Again, turn it off. That part is really important. If you try to just plop this all over your head, it's going to pull your hair out like Mufasa, and nobody wants that. So make sure you're turning it off and on in between. Oop, I lost some there. I'll turn her so you guys can see. I'm literally just, it's not rocket science. You just plop it in there and massage it around. This works on somebody who has really short hair or medium length hair or really long hair. It doesn't matter. The only thing I might say for my more long haired gals is that you might want to hit your first third of your hair first. So maybe just up at the scalp, but let the last half or third of your hair hang, and then hit that at the end. That way you're not overly drying your ends, if you don't want that. So I'm almost pretty dry here. Not taking too long. Not bad. Alrighty. She has a beautiful natural curly hair. Okay, so now I'm going to move to my second standard section. And you may be thinking, Sam, I really thought that would take a lot longer if I actually sectioned my hair out, but I feel like if you actually take the time to section it out, it cuts your blow drying time, because you're not going over sections that you've already dried and working twice as hard, and you're not overly drying your hair. I'm into my next section here. I'm just going to scrunch it up a little bit with my hands. I'll come in here with my towel again. Same thing. Make sure you're lifting. This is important for my curly girls. Lifting at the root and then coming in with the towel. Not just plopping it against your head. That flattens out curls like nobody's business. So we're lifting at the root. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Lift at the root. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Look at my poor ugly towel. We should have used the black ones. They swore they were supposed to be color safe. Bleach resistant. Nope. Alright. Okay, so then once you feel like you've got it about, 30 or 40% dry with the towel, come in with your diffuser and it's the same thing. I will also say that whenever you're thinking about your section sizes, so like these 3 standard sections, there's kind of a point for that actually, because it's the amount of airflow that's hitting your hair. It's kind of the width of the airflow, if that makes sense. If you ever looked at a concentrator, it's about like that. Same thing, you're taking about that size of a section for each of these panels, and technically when you get to the top you're going to kind of go in a horseshoe section. So that's why, in case you're ever wondering. So again, we're going to lift at the roots, catch it with the diffuser, claw, and massage. And I'm using low heat because it is not necessary to blast her in the head with high heat to get her hair to curl. And again. And you're just going to move from one side of your head around to the other side of your head. Easy peasy. Beautiful. You do got some good curl. Yeah. Another thing I'll add about my ladies who have wavy or curly hair, another benefit of using a diffuser instead of, you know, trying to blast it with heat or using a curling iron to get it curly. If you've got naturally curly hair, use one of these babies in an ionic blow dryer, because you really don't even have to get it all the way dry. You could get it maybe, you know, 60%, 70% dry. It's not going to fall. It shouldn't. As long as you're using a good prep product for your hair, it shouldn't fall. And then that way, you know, you can get ready in 10 or 15 minutes, have beautiful curls all day long, and they should be voluminous since we've used our little diffuser claw. So it can make for a quick get ready in the morning, which is always hard, especially when you have children. So now I'm all the way around to the other side of her head. We're still using the same technique here. So you're not getting super bored. So when I'm diffusing, I don't mind if it gets a little 80s up in here. Like if it gets kind of fluffier than I want it to be at the end, that's okay, because I can always take a wide tooth comb at the end and kind of tame it down a little bit. So I think that I'd rather have too much volume than not enough volume when I'm doing this with the diffuser. So it's okay if you get a little wild and you're thinking, oh man, that was a mistake. It's not the end of the world. You can always take a wide tooth comb and kind of tame it down a little bit. So I'm just coming back around here, making sure I've got most of the moisture out. Again, I'm not super concerned, especially with my ends. If they're still a little damp, I'm totally okay with that. Okay, now we're to my last and final section, which is the very tip top. It's really easy to kind of map this section out for you. I call it the halo section because it kind of looks like you got a little halo on your head. But you can also take your hand, take the palm of your hand and place it against your hairline and just flatten it over the top of your head. Draw a little line around, and that is where, right there is where that third section should be. So it's from either side of where your hair kind of recedes all the way to the top of the crown here at the very top. And it's like if you just took your hand and put it on the top of your head, or it should be. Maybe my hands are gigantic, but that works for me. So, okay, once you get to the tippy top here, it's boring. Same thing. We just kind of scrunch it up with our hands a little bit. You can take the t-shirt or your towel and scrunch it a little bit to get a little more of the moisture out. Picked a good day to have a good hair day.
Is it curly?
Yeah, it's just really curly. And this is with no product in her hair. She must have a hairdresser that takes care of her hair.
Yeah.
Uses high quality color. Does her glosses often. That's another thing for my curly girls. You guys feel like your hair is getting a little bit dry, or even my straight haired girls for that matter. You can always come in and have me do a clear gloss coat. It doesn't add any color, it doesn't add any lightness, it's just a clear coat of gloss color. It's ammonia free. It can seal your hair. And like I said before about the heat protectant, that's basically what it would do. It would create a barrier to keep anything from coming into your cuticle, and it prevents things from slipping back out of your cuticle, like your color moisture, proteins, things like that. We live in a very dry climate, so a gloss coat is super beneficial. So if anybody's feeling like your hair is feeling super dry because it's the middle of the winter time and you could use something to help create a barrier, gloss color. It's cheap. Takes about an hour. Let's be honest, I always say an hour and it's what, hour and a half, 2 hours, but you get the point. Okay, so I've kind of blotted out the rest of that remaining moisture. She's still about, you know, 60%, 50% damp, and that's fine. I'm gonna take my diffuser, same thing. Bonnie kind of parts her hair wherever the heck it wants to fall, so it's sort of towards the center. If you have a hard part, that's fine. Make sure that you're parted though to that hard part. Otherwise, if you come in here and diffuse, you might end up not ever being able to find your part again. So part it where it naturally falls, and then we're gonna come in here, same thing, lift at the roots with your fingertips, not your palm, your fingertips, because we don't wanna smush her hair to her head. So lift with your fingertips, come in there with the diffuser, and turn it on and massage. On low heat preferably. Unless you have more, you know, crazy thick hair, I don't mind if you want to bump it up to higher heat, but maybe just for the first round, and then when it comes time to finish it, bump it down to low heat. Nobody needs extremely high heat. And if you guys want to ask me any questions, you can go ahead and put questions down in the thread. I will try to pay attention and see them, and I can kind of answer as I blow dry here. I hope you guys can hear me over the blow dryer. I didn't really think about that. Now when I'm doing the top of the head here, I'm moving in a horseshoe pattern, and that's pretty standard. That horseshoe pattern, you're going to be doing that with your straighter haired clients, your wavy haired clients, whether you're blow drying her out straight or diffusing it curly. It's kind of the same little pattern there. It pretty much just ensures that you're not overly drying her hair, so you're not going over sections that you already touched with your blow dryer, because we don't want to keep going over dry hair with the blow dryer. That overly dries the hair. So I'm just going to come right back around here. Just finishing it up, following my horseshoe all the way back around. Look at those beautiful curls. Look at the iPad. You can see. Or my side here, over there, I guess you probably. Just making my way around the horseshoe, back and forth. Not smushing her hair flat with my palm. Lifting with my fingertips. And massaging with the diffuser. Again, it's fluffier than I probably want to finish it out with, but that's okay because I can take a wide tooth comb and tame it down a little bit at the end. And I'd rather have too much curl than not enough. The doll had tripped me. It's like coming around there and she tripped me. Okay. Now, once I've come to a point where I feel like I've got good curl definition, it's pretty evenly dry. It could even still be just a teensy bit damp, that's okay. You don't need to go overly dry with curly hair. The more moisture we keep, the better. So at this point, now that I've got her curls popping, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set them in the look that I want, which is whatever you guys choose. It's your, your hair, your style. You could choose to set it like, pull on the ends and loosen your coil a little bit so that your hair hangs a little longer in some places than the other, which I'm going to do to Bonnie here in a second. Or you may love the way that it diffused out just how it is, and then you'll move on to your finishing step. So I'm going to put her curls into place where I want them. Curls are like flower bushes. You just really have to let them tell you what to do most of the time. And then I'm going to pull out a finishing spray, I'm not going to hit her with it because she's allergic to the perfume, but I'm going to pretend like I'm finishing her hair off with some finishing spray, because that's going to lock down the cuticle, keep my curls from getting frizzy throughout the day. And I would hit it with a cold shot. So like I would turn my blow dryer to cold, and at the end I would cold diffuse that finishing spray into the curl, and that will keep the curls bouncy and nice and smooth instead of getting all frizzy and weird throughout the day.
Now what's the difference between finishing spray and hairspray?
So finishing spray is typically a lot lighter of a hold. And that's not always true though, because sometimes a finishing spray is meant to be a firm hold. So you sort of just have to look on the bottle to see whether it's a light hold, a firm hold. It might say flexible hold, and that's probably the one that's going to be the very lightest. With Bonnie's hair, she could choose whatever she needed. We live in a very dry climate, so probably not a super firm hold is necessary. If you're living in Missouri, for example, and it's the middle of summer, you might want to use a much firmer hold for the summer months and lock it in with your diffuser so that it doesn't get frizzy. But here in North Dakota, it's not so much of an issue, so I'll pretend to use a very light hold one at the end here. But first, I'm going to form her curls into place where I want them. And this is something that I think a lot of people forget that you can even do. So like her haircut, for example, is meant to be like kind of an angled bob. Once I've got it all diffused in, it's more, like a cloud. It doesn't have as much shape to it. So if I just come through here and I sort of just tug on the areas that I want to lengthen, and I'm going to try to stay, don't want to get too much up at the top because then I'll kind of diffuse her height, but just tugging right around where I want those little babies to be a little bit longer. Just using my fingers. But you could also use a wide tooth comb, which, let me give you an example of a good wide tooth comb. Let's see. I forgot about that big boy. Okay. This is a fantastic wide tooth comb. Some wide tooth combs I'm not as crazy about because the teeth are actually pretty close together, so it's like, why don't you just use a wig brush? This one's nice and wide. It's almost, I guess, like a pinky fingernail width. And I could also use this instead of my fingers. I would just lightly come through here and pull those curls out a little longer. I'm not going to do anything to the back because I'm loving all the height I got up towards the crown of her head. So I would just leave the back alone. And then same rule, I'd come through this side and sort of just lightly, don't want to get too crazy because then you pull all your curl out, lightly come through there with my wide tooth comb. Okay. So now we have that pretty bob angle there. Now if Bonnie wanted her curls to look looser, then she could go more nuts with this comb. She could really come through here and just rake it through. But for this tutorial, I like how bouncy it is, so I'm going to leave it. If you have bangs, this would be the time to kind of set your bangs in before you spray. But I'm just going to take the comb sort of through here because I really like what it's doing on its own. Okay. Pretty bonbon. Okay. I will also add that if you have curly hair, it wants to get really curly until you get to the tippy top. First of all, some layers could help with that because it would take the weight out. Typically, the hair on top is the longest because it has to reach farther down to get to your shoulder or your chin or whatever it is. But So layers could really help you a lot. If you don't want layers though, because you feel like it gets frizzy, then go ahead and diffuse out until the end, and you can actually just take either a wand like this, or a flat iron like this little baby, and only curl that horseshoe section. Bonnie's curls are fantastic and they curl all the way up to the top, so we don't have a problem with that, and this is turned off. But if I needed to, I could come through here and just in that horseshoe section, I could pick up little pieces that I felt like could use some extra help, and I would just wrap them around my wand and then let them go if I needed to. And I could do that all around the top. Typically when you do that, then at the end it looks like you maybe used a curling iron on your whole head, even though you didn't. So it's a really good little trick. If you're gonna do that, make sure you've sprayed a heat protectant in your hair while it was damp, or put one on while it's dry before you hit it with the curling iron. Just in case, because if it's still a little damp from when you did the diffusing, you do not want to wrap damp hair around a curling iron, obviously. So, anyways. Alrighty. I'm going to show you the finishing spray. Okay, Paul Mitchell makes this one. It's called Hold Me Tight. It's pretty awesome. It's really light hold. It's got a nice smell to it. So if I was going to put this into Bonnie's hair, which I am not because she's allergic to anything with fragrance, I would come in here, I would hold the can. You want to hold the can the length of the can away from the head. That's actually a trick I learned in hair school. So you don't want to be up close to your head when you're doing this. Make sure you're about a can's length away from your head, and you want to just lightly spray, making circular motions around your head. Then take your diffuser, and this is helpful even if you haven't put in a finishing spray, because the cold air, since cold makes the cuticle tighten and close up, warmth makes it open. So when we use our warm diffuser against our hair, we're making that cuticle open a little bit. So if we want it to be really sleek and shiny, we want it to close down even more, we want to hit it with cold air. So even if you didn't use a finishing spray first, this could be really helpful to help your hair not get frizzy. I'm just letting the air cool down a little bit. But of course, the finishing spray helps really lock it in. So then what I would do is I would start at the top this time, and then just diffuse in that cold air with little circular motions, maybe smaller than the ones you did before, just little ones. And then I'm just going to go around the head. Not any sort of pattern here, we're just blasting it with some cool air just to help it stay nice and shiny and smooth. And you don't have to hold it on there a long time, just enough to cool it down a little. And again, the reason we're doing this is because hot air, heat in general makes the cuticle swell and open, where cold, be it air, water, whatever it is, makes the cuticle shrink and close. And that's why cold air at the end. And warm air when you're trying to get volume into your hair, because you want it to swell. So it makes sense. Okay. And then if Bonnie wanted to, if say she lived in Missouri in the summer and it's like so humid you can go like this and part the sea, she could hit it even with like a firmer hold hairspray after, if she didn't use one before or whatever. It doesn't matter. The only thing I'll say for curly haired people at the end is just try not to touch it too much throughout the day, because the oils from your hands will make it kind of fall back down and get flat again. So I would just not touch it if I could help it. I would even, especially, I think everybody doesn't need to wash their hair every single day, but especially girls with curly hair, you guys don't need to wash your hair every day. Unless you're in the gym getting really sweaty every day, try to leave it and only wash like every 2 or 3 days. And when you're in the shower washing your hair, try to only scrub at the scalp and stay off of your ends. A lot of people don't realize your ends they're not really dirty, not really oily. I mean, unless you're using a lot of product in your hair all the time, the only part of your head that actually needs dirt and oil stripped away is up towards the scalp, where your scalp actually secretes that oil. So go easy on your ends. Try to, when you shampoo, only concentrate up at the scalp. And then if you want to pull it through at the end, like say you use a lot of mousse or wax or whatever it is, just to kind of help get it out of your ends, that's fine. But try not to too aggressively shampoo from roots to ends every time you take a shower. And of course, don't use super hot water, because that also, the heat makes the cuticle swell and open, and you're going to lose a lot of moisture, and that's sort of negating the benefits of using a moisturizing shampoo. So just make sure to keep that in mind. All right, Miss Bonnie. I'll give you guys a close look here at her beautiful curls. So jealous. Look at those bouncy little babies. I'll turn her so you guys can see. It's so dark, it's hard to see. But yes, got some really nice curl there. It's very smooth, no frizz. And that's with no product. So if you're actually using product to help keep it smooth and everything else, it could really look nice. So, testament to a ionic blow dryer. Okay. You're free. Okay, I'm gonna move on to my directional methods for the pre-dry. Just gonna move my chair out of the way. Okay. And I'm gonna check and see if any of you guys are asking any questions. But I don't think you are. Okay. Someone asked me a question though, just so I can see if it pops up, because I'm not sure. Can somebody ask me a question? Just say hi or something. I don't know. Oh well. Anyway. See you later, Bonnie. Okay, I'm gonna move on to your directional pre-dry. This is for control. So anytime you start your blow dry, depending on the length of your hair, that's what determines what method you want to use whenever you're going to start blow drying. So if you have short to medium length hair, you probably want to pick a blow dry method that's going to fit your length of hair. It's not necessarily about whether you need volume or any of those things. That's more once you get to your finishing method. So I'm going to show you the worksheet so you can know which one I'm talking about. So give me just a second. Okay, so the one I'm going to start with is this one right here. It says pre-dry, medium to long, directional method. And I hope that's not backwards, but it probably is. The ones you have that I shared are not backwards. So first things first, we start in our 3 standard sections. I already washed her hair, so it's already wet. I added some super skinny to her hair, which is this one right here. I know a lot of you guys use this stuff. This stuff is awesome, and it really cuts blow dry time. So I added a little bit of that to her hair as well. Helps to smooth and straighten the hair. You can pick whatever product meets your hair needs to apply on damp hair, but it just really depends on what you need. So like if you need a little muscle, like say your hair is pretty curly and you need that extra help to get it straight, or your hair is really limp and fine and doesn't want to hold a lot of volume, you might want to go with something like a mousse, like a conditioning type mousse. But if, say, you're wanting to add curl to your hair, so you're wanting more like of a hold, then I would maybe use something like this curl cream. This twirl around. So this is more for hold, mousse is more for muscle. And this would add more definition as well than a mousse would. So it just depends on what you need. So I'm going to start with my first section, which is just the nape here. So again, it came in from behind the top of the ear there and went all the way around to the other side. So just the nape of her neck. And again, invest in these. They're great. They actually hold up hair that's difficult, especially heavy hair. Okay. Now I'm going to put my concentrator on the end of my blow dryer. You can use a concentrator on yourself or you can choose not to. I actually don't like to use a concentrator on myself because I feel like it's hard, especially when I get around to the back of my head, to know where that airflow is hitting me. Whereas if I can just hold my blow dryer fairly far away from my head and hit it with open air, it's easier for me to know where the air is actually hitting me on my section that I'm taking. So I'm going to use this concentrator because I'm doing it on somebody else, but you may not like to do that on yourself. So just FYI. I'm going to use a paddle brush because like we talked about before, she has straight hair naturally and it's about medium texture. So what I'm really looking for is just smoothness and to try to not rake through her hair when I'm blow drying it. So the first section I'm going to take, and you guys can follow along looking at your little worksheet, is just a diagonal back section. So if I was going to draw a line from the top of her ear down around to the bottom of her hairline on her nape, a diagonal section like that. And I'm going to start by going this direction with it, so my diagonal back. And then when I get to the other side of her head, I'm going to switch and I'll stop and show you. And when I'm doing this, I'm trying my best to only hit the first 1/3 of the hair. I don't want to take it all the way through the ends. Okay, now once I get to the other side of her head, I'm going to switch my blow dryer. So when I was coming around this direction, I was coming this way. Now that I'm switching, I'm going to go the other direction. And I'm just trying to be careful not to get her in. So once I've pre-dried, meaning I just dried the first 1/3 of her hair, I'm going to come in here and finish it out with my round brush. And again, the size sections that you can take are determined on the width of your round brush. So my round brush is an extra large round brush, meaning I can take a lot bigger sections. I'm going to switch my blow dryer's airflow and heat to low, so I make sure I don't bake those ends. And I'm going to come in here, hold it parallel, that way I get plenty of volume, and come down to the ends. And when I get to the ends, I want to roll my brush like this. This is something you need to practice. And my airflow should be not on the hair, but against the grain of the hair, like this. I don't know if you can see that well enough. So like this. So I'm rolling and I'm blowing my air on top of the brush, not into the brush. And I can do this in just about 3 sections. It shouldn't take you too long to get the bottom of your hair done. And I'm trying to just concentrate on the ends now. I'm trying not to go over hair that I've already gotten dry because I don't want to overly dry it. I'm just rolling my brush, going against the hair, not on top of the hair. Alright, so now, same thing, I'm going to go to my number 2 section, which is from the areas where the hair recedes. Here's the mastoid process. I'm going to leave the mastoid process out, and I'm going to clip up this very top section, which again is the halo section. So if you took your palm and put it against your front hairline and draped your fingers over, drew a line, it's this horseshoe on the very top. Now, if I wanted some added volume here, I could use some sort of a root lifter or a thickening spray, and I wouldn't want to go too crazy, but I could take it, and this wouldn't apply if you had naturally curly hair because it would pull curl. So say you have fine curly hair, you don't need to use a root lifter necessarily. You've probably got enough volume just from your natural curl. But if you have fine to medium hair and it's fairly straight or wavy, a little root lifter can be your BFF, especially if it's really fine and thin. So I would just take it up around where the crown of the head is. The crown of the head is where this juts out right here from the nape of your neck. I would give it a spray. Again, we hold the bottle, the length of the bottle, away from the head. Just a couple sprays there at the crown. And now I'm going to continue my directional pre-dry, where I take the diagonal sections, I go one direction till I get to the opposite side, and then I go the other direction. Here we go. Holding my brush at a diagonal, and I'm blow drying against the hair, not into the hair. I'm not hitting the ends. I'm trying to stay just on that first 1/3. Okay, now once I've gotten to the opposite side, I had my brush this way, I'm going to flip it to this way. Same thing on your own self. So, and I will demonstrate that later on my own hair so you guys can see what it looks like when you're trying to do it on your own head. But this is just so you can have an idea of the direction that I hold the brush and how the airflow needs to hit. So we'll go the other direction. And my ends are still damp. Another reason that we're taking those diagonal sections is because we're using the skull, the actual bones of the skull, to help smooth our hair out. That way we're getting it as smooth as possible. That's another reason for using your directional method. Now I use the round brush on the first section, and you can continue to use the round brush all the way to the tip top of your head. I'm going to show you using a leafing technique with this paddle brush on one side of her head, and then I'm going to use the round brush on the other just so you can see the difference. A leafing technique is if you need extra smoothness and not so much volume. So say you have longer hair and you're not looking to get a ton of volume into your hair, you can just use this to dry your hair with to finish it out instead of a round brush. And the only difference is you're just not going to get as much volume out of this. I'm going to take the same kind of sections, these diagonal back sections, until I hit the center. And then on the other side, I'm going to show you what it would look like if I kept round brushing. So again, turn my low air on, and you're going to come in and roll the brush, blow dry to the ends. One more time. Come in, roll it. Okay. And again, we don't want to overly dry our ends, so just make sure that you're being careful and you're being mindful of knowing when those are actually dry. Kind of check them with your fingertips from time to time. Same thing as we come around here. and I'm letting my airflow go with the grain and not on top of it. So I'm not holding my brush like this, I'm holding it like this. So that's directional, the leafing method. So you're wanting to create smooth, more flat hair and not so much volume. So I'm going to flip her around. And on this side, I'm going to show you round brush method. So this would be if we had continued to keep round brushing. So the same idea, we want to hold our brush like this and roll it. And the airflow needs to go with the hair, not on top of it, but with it. And the size section is determined by the width of your round brush. Let's see if I can get in a better angle here for you guys. I can take it towards myself at a right angle, or if I'm looking for added volume, I can go straight up in the air. I just want to be very mindful that, again, I'm not pushing air onto the top of her hair, but I'm going with the grain. Now, as you can see, we're getting a lot more fluffiness with this round brush than we did with the paddle brush. Last section. Okay, so I'm going to show you. You can see the difference. This would be a flat wrap. This is with a round brush. So that's the difference. This is, it's not flat wrap. This is leafing with your paddle brush or your boar bristle brush, and then this is with a round brush. And you can see there's a lot more volume with this. And it really just depends on the look you're wanting to go for at the end, what you pick. Okay. Now when I come to the top of the head, I want to find my part line first. And I can do that, this is interesting if you've never known this before, you can find your best natural part by combing your hair back and then pushing it forward. Where it splits, so like she has one here, she has a little one here, but where it splits is where your best natural part is because you have a little cowlick there. So if you're ever curious to know where should I be parting my hair? And obviously your face shape determines where if you're gonna have a side part or not, so you may not get to go with this, but if you're like me and you got a pretty rounded forehead and it doesn't matter, that's how I would find my natural part because I get the best volume out of it. And it's not gonna be doing weird things all day long. Okay, if you have bangs, go ahead and blow dry your bangs first. Don't do any of this until your bangs are set because we know how that can start to look. If we try to blow dry it all at once, the bangs go crazy and then we're sitting there with a flat iron frying our bangs. So if you have bangs, go ahead and do them first. If they're straight or side bangs, I definitely recommend just keeping with that directional method where you're taking those diagonal sections and you're blow drying to one side and then the other side, trying to just stay at the regrowth. I know it's hard because bangs are very short, but try not to hit the ends as much as you can because at the end you can either take your round brush and finish it out, or you can just use the roundness of your forehead to get them fairly, beveled at the end where they have like a little bend at the end. You just want to blow dry right against your forehead. Just the bone of your forehead can help to kind of bend it in, especially if you've got a haircut that is meant to do that. So I'm going to finish this directional method, which means we're taking pie-shaped sections and we're going in a horseshoe, meaning we're going around our head. We'll go like this way first, taking those diagonal sections. Let's see, the sections should look like a pie. So that's what the section should look like. And then we're blow drying against the hair, not into the hair, against it. So I'm going to start that and go all the way around her head, and then I'll show you how to finish it the same way I did on the other side, either with a flat wrap or with a round brush. So she'll look kind of funny, but it's the best way so you guys can see both ways. Okay, so I've come to the very back of her occipital bone. I'm going to follow that horseshoe around to the other side, and I'm going to go ahead and switch and go this direction, because then when I come back the other way, I'm going to switch again. So we're just trying to hit the first third of the hair. Now I'm blow drying it back a little bit. So I'm in a funny angle so you guys can see. And her head is down, so that makes it a little harder, but I want you guys to be able to see. Okay, so then once I get to that other side, again, I'm going to take diagonal sections and I'm going to come back the other direction, only this time I'm going to start on this side and I'm going to come this way. So the sections will be like the pie, only they're going to be this way this time. And I'll end up blow drying the front panel on this side back towards myself. Okay, now it's time to finish her off. I'm going to find her natural part again. You can do it with it dry too. Okay, and I'm going to, let's see, I'll leaf on this side so you can see it. And then I want to show you a trick with the blow dryer to get that kind of swoopy Kim Kardashian like long side bang. I want to show you guys that trick on this side since this is her heavy side. So I'll show you the flat wrap on this side and then I'll do round brush on this side. So again, we're going to come in. I'm going to guess I'm going to kind of try to do it left-handed so you guys can see. But I'm going to come in with my brush, flip it, so I've got a hold of it, and then with the hair, I want to take it down. Coming in, flip, follow it down. And I'm not touching that first third of the hair with my blow dryer because it's already dry, it doesn't need more. Okay, and then I'm going to come over here and I'll show you how to round brush this heavier side. And again, it's totally fine to round brush your whole head or flat wrap your whole head, or if you want it to be nice and smooth on one side, like say you have a bob and you want it real smooth on your light side and real fluffed up on your heavy side or whatever it is, you can mix and match. It's just whatever look you're going for towards the end, and typically it really depends on how long your hair is, on what pre-dry and finishing technique you decide to use. So just use those little worksheets I gave you and that'll help you decide. And again, I'm going to use sections that are as wide as my tool. So I can come in here and find where I started, which was right about here, put my tool against her head. So I'm going to save this section for last. I'm going to start over here. And if I want a lot of volume, I'm going to come straight up. If I want even more volume, I'm going to push it to the other side pretty hard. rolling. Now, if you have a side bang, this is where we would start to do that little Kim Kardashian trick. Your bangs should be living. I'm going to show you with my comb here. Your bangs should live as far back as if you put a flat, like a straight edge against the front hairline. Wherever it lifts up, that's where your bangs start. And then depending on how heavy a bang that you want, you can either come from the mastoid, or if like you're wanting just a side bang, you come this way. But this is typically where they live, from this point forward. So that can help you find your bangs if you've lost them, which sometimes we do. But here's my trick. For the little Kim Kardashian flip. So I'm picking up that part that would be her bangs, where they live. I'm going to take them, load up my brush, and I'm going to take it hard to the opposite side. When I get to her ends, I'm going to roll, roll, roll. So I'm going roll, 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 roll. One more time. So taking it hard to the opposite side, roll, roll, roll. Now when it comes back, she's got this nice little flip, like that. That's the trick. And then I can pretty much just do the top of my head in only a couple of sections with the round brush, since it's such a large round brush. If you have a smaller round brush, you need to shrink your section sizes. So there it is, your directional pre-dry, and I showed you the leafing method with the paddle brush, and I showed you round brush method for finishing with the round brush. We used a directional pre-dry, and that was the one that has little diagonal sections. Ooh, little diagonal sections on your worksheets, and I think I put the title at the top too. And again, you would pick whatever pre-dry and finishing technique based on typically the length of your hair, and that's all on your worksheet, so you can see which one is suggested for you. So now I am going to blow dry my own hair so you guys can see what it looks like to try to blow dry your own hair, because it's very easy for me to stand here and do this on a doll head or do it on somebody else's hair, and then when you're at home in the bathroom, you're like, wait, how in the world do I do this on my less dominant hand side? So I'm going to do that now. And my hair is probably partly dry because it's pretty fine, but I will spray it down with some water so I'm not cheating. I washed my hair with the sulfate-free Awapui shampoo and conditioner, and that is my favorite shampoo and conditioner for every hair type. It is so fantastic. It's no sulfates, no parabens, really moisturizing with the Awapui oil. Love me some Awapui oil. My hair is fine and straight. I have a lot of fine hair, but it is definitely a little bitty fine hair follicle. Okay. But at least since it is so fine, that wasn't too difficult to get it wet again. My baldiness. Okay, and now my hair is all wet. First things first, I would want to use a good leave-in conditioner, which, this is the one I personally use. You do not have to use what I personally use. I just really like this one by Biolage. It's low in alcohol and it's for moisture. I believe it has sunflower oil. Let me double check. Aloe, I'm sorry. got some aloe in it. And then this Awapui Sea Spray. This is my everything. I use this on pretty much everybody's hair. The only people who I wouldn't use this on is maybe people with truly curly hair, but if you had curly hair and you needed extra hold, this would not be your friend because it's a very light hold. But it is awesome for root boosting. So like I could use it as a root lifter. I could use it as a thickener. I can use it if I have wavy or curly hair and it's fine to medium texture to make it wavy or curly. It is awesome, awesome, awesome. It has Awapui oil for moisture and sea salt to help it get curly, and I love it. So Awapui Sea Spray. Before I start, I'm going to spray a little of it up at the crown of my head just for some extra volume. And again, I'm holding it a bottle's length away from my head. And then I like to have quite a bit of volume up here at the front of my face. And since I don't have many layers anymore, I have a lot of tapering through the front of my face. This helps to get it lifted up a little bit extra since it's a little heavy. And that's all it takes. Just a couple sprays, so don't go crazy. Okay, now I'm going to show you a directional pre-dry with a finish using the round brush on my own hair. So I think this is what people struggle with the most, is trying to use that round brush on themselves. I have put my first section down. Again, we're using standard sections, so I went ear to ear to my occipital bone. I can just feel it with my fingers. That's where, I go to the top of my ears, I can feel that. I can feel where that bone juts out, and that's where my nape is. That's where the first section should be. Okay? And like I said before, I don't use a concentrator at home. I just feel like it makes the airflow shrink too much, and then I can't feel it on my neck, which is usually how I feel where the air is hitting. And I'm going to use a paddle brush to do my pre-dry with. So just pay attention this time, since you can't see the back of my head, pay attention to how I hold the blow dryer and the brush, because you're not going to be able to see the back of your head either. So you're going to have to kind of go with where it's feeling like it's hitting. So like when I hold my brush at an angle, I can feel it's hitting that diagonal line, and I can use the mirror to see where the airflow is hitting, but I can also feel it. So make sure that you're paying attention to that when you're drying. You can feel where that brush is hitting your head. You can feel where the airflow is hitting your head, and that helps you keep your lines a little bit straighter and cleaner. So here we go. I'm going to pre-dry and then finish with the round brush. Notice how when I go back the other direction, I pull up that blow dryer and bring my elbow up. So I'm still holding it the same way. And notice my ends are still wet, still damp. And that's what we want. And I can take my fingers and feel. That's all it took to get my roots dry. And they're dry. So now what I'm going to do is put my blow dryer on a lower setting so that the heat lowers down and the airflow isn't as high. Because now that I'm to the last, half of my hair where it's still damp, I don't need to work as hard to get that dry. That hair is older. It's been living on my head longer, meaning it's probably a little bit drier. So I don't need to over dry it. So when I come in to use my round brush on myself, when I am on my right side, I hold my brush with my left hand and my blow dryer with my right hand. The reason for that is so that I'm not trying to contort myself and reach across my body. I'm able to see better in the mirror what I'm doing. Also, that way I'm not blow drying into the brush on accident. I'm blow drying with the brush. So this keeps my back straighter, easier to blow dry this way. So I'm going to come in here, load my brush, turn the blow dryer on low, and I'm just going to bring it down smoothly to the front and then roll. Like so. One more time. Load it up. Bring the nozzle up. Make sure you're going with the grain of your hair. And then roll, roll, roll. And now I have a nice little curl on my end, and that's just from using my ceramic round brush. I didn't have to use a curling iron, just a round brush. If I want to get it straighter, like say the look I'm going for at the end is a little straighter, then I can come back through there and kind of straighten it out more and not roll it up so high. So if I want to go straighter, I just come through here and slow it down right there. And then when I get to the end, roll, 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 and then pull through. That straightens out that curl a little bit more. Okay, that's all it takes to get that one side of my head done because I have such little hair. You may have to do 2 sections there depending on the thickness of your hair. Mine is so fine, I can just split my hair in half in the back and just do one on each side. So I have really fine hair though. You may need to take multiple sections. Okay, so now I'm switching to the other side. I held my brush like this on this side and my blow dryer was like so, with my elbow up, nozzle facing down. I was holding it by the handle. When I switched to the other side, I grabbed my blow dryer by the nozzle. That is where you have to learn that little trick right there. Nobody, I don't know how many girls didn't figure that out at home, and they're like, Sam, I can't figure out how to do this. I'm like contorting trying to. So on your dominant side, on your right side, blow dryer in the right hand. On the left side, blow dryer goes into the left hand. You have to learn how to round brush with both hands. That comes with practice. So if you're not able to do it at first, keep trying because you will get it. So now that I'm on the other side, same story, different tune. I'm going to load up my brush and bring it on down. Trying to only concentrate that hot air on hair that is damp and not hair that is already dry. Okay? One more time. Whenever I grab my hair, like on this side, it's easy to come underneath and get my hair with that. I can do that like this on this side, but for some reason, since I'm right hand dominant, if I make a scissor with my 2 fingers, like so, pull it up, grab it with my other scissor fingers, and load it this way, for some reason, it's easier. I don't know why. Maybe you try it, maybe you don't. Maybe it's simple for you to just come in here with the brush, but for me, I gotta use my scissor fingers. One more time. There we go. That's literally all it takes to get the whole bottom section of my hair dry. So now I'm going to move up to my second standard section. Again, this is where I take up that halo section. So on either side of where my hair recesses, I put my fingers in, feel where the top of my head is, and I'm just going to clip this up. Make sure when you're putting up this very top section, you get those little ends nice and secure underneath your bun or your little twist. That way they don't, sometimes if I forget my ends are sticking out here, then they get overly dry because I'm trying to dry right through my regrowth area and I end up hitting my ends on accident. So just make sure those little babies are tucked away where they're safe and wet. Okay, same thing that we did on the doll head. I'm going to use a directional pre-dry. That's where we go in diagonal lines this way, and then we switch it and go the other way. Just moving around my head here. When I get to this point on my head, personally, you do not have to do this. You could go ahead and switch hands and keep going in that, opposite direction. But for me, it's so much easier, so I don't have to switch hands a bunch of times, that once I get to the center, then I'll go ahead and go the other direction, and I won't go all the way around my head until I'm finished pre-drying this side of my head. So it might be easier for you too. Check and make sure it's dry, and it's nice and dry, so I'm going to switch to the other side. So I'm going from holding my brush like this, blow dryer like this, I'm switching hands. Now we're over here, holding it by the nozzle instead of the handle on my left side. And get around the back of my head a little easier this way. So when I get to the middle part of my head, I find that it's easier to get back there if I go ahead and keep going that direction with my blow dryer in this hand and my brush in this hand. Again, it depends if it's easier for you. If it's not, keep doing it the other way. Now when I come back this direction, I want to keep my blow dryer the way that it is so that it's the easiest way for me to not go into the hair but against it. And if you don't want to have to switch hands, you can also, just on this section, not on the nape, but you can try coming around the back of your head, if it's easier. Okay, once I've got my pre-dry done, my ends are still wet, hold the blow dryer by the handle, round brush in my left hand to do my right side. Load it up, and I'm being careful not to be blow drying into the brush, but down with the brush, against the hair, not into the hair. Okay, when it comes time to get into the back side of your head, a lot of people have a hard time getting a hold of that. You can take the brush and use it to section. I find that helps a lot, so you get a nice straight section. Holding it in my scissor fingers with the blow dryer, load my hair into the brush. And in this area, I kind of like to bring it up a little bit more. If you're really handy, you can do this little number. I know. Otherwise, you have to set it down and start all over again. Or I use my scissor fingers. And then again, blow dry, blow dry, blow dry, right? Roll the brush. Okay. It's feeling pretty dry. I think I've got one more little section back there. Again, very back of my hair. You can use the brush handle to lift that section out so you get a nice clean section so you're not over drying hair that you've already dried. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the other side of my head. I'm going to take my blow dryer, nozzle into my hand, switch the round brush. In this part, I can just load my hair into the round brush nice and easy, or you can use your scissor fingers. And I'm trying not to choke my brush with the blow dryer nozzle. I'm trying to hold it out. Sometimes I kind of forget, but I try my best to not hold that airflow too close to my brush. Again, use the tail of the comb or the brush to pick up your next section, so you're not picking up sections that have already been dried. Scissor fingers. Okay, so now I've got that middle section nice and dry. Again, it doesn't take me very long because I have little twigs, but so for you thicker haired girls it may take longer and you may have to take more sections. But now that I'm at the tippy top, this is where we're going to take down this last section and we're going to pre-dry. The way that I like to pre-dry my own hair, it definitely follows that directional method. If I had bangs, I might do it a little differently, but again, I can find my natural parting if I just comb everything back and push forward. You can obviously see mine. There's my natural part, easy to find. And I'm going to start on my right side, holding my blow dryer by the handle, taking diagonal pie-shaped sections. And instead of coming all the way around the head, you're more than welcome to do that because that's technically the correct way to do it. I actually go front to back, switch sides, front to back, because at the end I'm going to round brush it. So I'm still going to be putting quite a bit of airflow from roots to ends at the very top, and I don't want to overly dry my hair, so I may only blow dry it forward and not really blow dry it back, because I'm finishing off with the round brush roots to ends. But if you have a ton of hair and it is very thick, you probably want to stick with the way that I did it on the doll head, where you go in a horseshoe to this angle, to this side, and then back around to the other side. But I'm going to show you the way that I do it because I feel like this gets a lot of volume through the top of my hair, and since my hair is so fine and long and I don't have a ton of layers, it helps. So here we go. I'm going to take diagonal sections. Only blow drying middle, only blow drying roots to the middle part of my hair. I'm not going to the ends. And I go all the way back to it. And I almost am trying to go from this front corner to the back corner, but blow drying to the opposite side, because you will get more volume if you take your section to the complete opposite side. That's anytime you want extra volume somewhere, you need to push it the opposite direction. So now I'm going to do the other side. I'm switching hands, towel brush in this hand, blow dryer in this direction. That's not what I do. I keep them in these hands because I'm not having to go back. So forget what I just said. Hold it by the handle, paddle brush in your left hand still. If you want to blow dry like I do, I'm going to go the other direction now from this side of my head to the back of my occipital bone, taking those diagonal sections and going this direction. So. And sometimes if I want extra volume, I switch it to low and do a little bit more pre-dry up at the roots. That way I get nice lift. Here we go again. And the other angle. And I'm feeling where the brush is, I'm feeling where the blow dryer is hitting me. And still damp, okay? So it's just at the roots. Now, I like to use my round brush to finish my hair because it gives me plenty of volume. Depending on how much volume you want, again, you can take it on base, which is where it goes straight up and down. You can take it off base, which is where you go slightly forward, or like in the case of the front part of your bangs or your long bangs, whatever you have here layering, you can go to the extreme opposite side this way. So I'm going to show you what I do. I start in the back, and I use my brush to determine what size of a section I can take. So I just take my finger, pull up this section right here. It's pretty much just like the back end of that halo section where that little horseshoe comes around to about the middle of the top of my head. So I'll kind of come around here so you can see. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So I load that into my brush, holding my brush in my right hand, my blow dryer in my left hand by the handle. I'm going to take it into the round brush like this, and I want to blow dry again against the hair and lifting it straight up. When I get to the top, I'm going to rotate the brush with my fingers. I'll show you guys from the side. And then when I get to the top, rotate, rotate, rotate. It gives me lots of fluff. So I sprayed that sea spray in there. Okay, now it's time for my next section. Again, I have a giant brush, so I can take big giant sections. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go from the back of that halo to about the center part of my top section. I'm going to load it into my brush. Low heat. Okay, we're going to go straight up. And then when I get to the top, roll, 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 roll. Lots of volume. All right, now we're ready for my last sections. That's going to be my front sections. And you can start on either side that you want. It really doesn't make a difference. But remember my little rule about where your fringe lives, where your bangs actually live. Whether you have layering like you're tapering like I do, or actual bangs, if you take a straight edge, put it to the front of your hairline where it lifts up, right there. That's where the fringe is. And that's where you want that extra volume in the front of your hair usually. So I'm going to show you how I get my hair to be lifted and come back the way that we were talking about earlier on my own hair. So I will load my brush up. And you can either take it, holding it by the nozzle here, off to the side like this, or I just take mine straight up and forward like this when I do my own. So it kind of depends on your hairline. You'll figure out really fast which is the wrong way to do it because you'll have a really funky looking cowlick. So you just have to pick. Here we go. Roll, roll, roll. And that is how you get that beautiful little doopty there. I don't know what the technical term for that is. And now I just have to finish my other side and I'm done. When I'm doing my front two sections, I just go ahead and keep my blow dryer the way that it is. But if you needed to switch hands, you totally could. You would just hold it like this. I feel like that is awkward trying to show you guys on a video, so I just kept it in the same hand. If you put your fingers through your hair at the end and feel like, you know, there's some areas that are still a little bit damp, by all means, go back in there with your round brush. Otherwise, you're done. If you want to run a smoothing iron through your hair at the end, there's just one thing that I want to say about that. Make sure your smoothing iron, or any hot tool you use for that matter, has the dial, not just low, medium, high heat, because you don't know what temperature that it actually is if you go by just the low, medium, high heat switch. It's usually like a switch. So make sure that it is this little guy. It actually says the temperatures. That way you know. For fine hair ladies, I want you guys to stay around that 250. I know that seems low, but it is plenty of heat to get your fine hair smooth, okay? My medium haired ladies can take it all the way up to like 280, maybe even 300. I'm fine with that. The only people that should be all the way up in this 320, 350 range are like medium to coarse who have a lot of hair. I mean, and just so that it goes a little bit faster, but typically I don't ever want to see you guys go past 350 on any hair type. I don't even know why it goes that hot because it's really not good for your hair. So anyway, you can decide to run the flat iron through your ends, and I'm just going to show you really quick on myself. Turn it way down. I keep mine all the way to the lowest setting that it can possibly go because it's so fine. Whenever you're deciding to do your flat iron, use those 3 standard sections. So, you know, pull your hair up, go 1, 2. Your sections are the width of your flat iron. So you can just kind of hold it and see, you might need to take 2 sections here, just 1 here or 2 there. It just depends on the width of your flat iron. Just for tutorial's sake, I'm not going to fool with all that because honestly, I don't use a flat iron. My round brush usually gets plenty of bend in my hair. I don't need the heat. So I'm just going to show you right here on this one little section so you can see my technique for following the brush with the flat iron. So if you've had a lot of trouble getting your flat iron to really work, this is probably why. You want to load your brush, bring your flat iron in, follow, 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 and then brush through the ends. That's the trick. I'm sure you've been waiting your whole life to see it. So follow, 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 comb through the ends. And that way you'll get a really nice smooth finish. I prefer that you guys use some sort of heat protectant, preferably when your hair is wet, if you're going to blow dry it. If you let it air dry and you're just wanting to pop some curls in, make sure you use some sort of spray-on heat protectant. And always check the back of your bottle and make sure that alcohol, especially sterile alcohol, is listed either nowhere in the ingredients or way towards the bottom. Ingredients labels list things in the concentration that they exist in the product. So typically you see water first because that's the basis for the product, but then those real ingredients like coconut oil and awapui oil, sunflower seed oil, anything that adds moisture should be towards the top. It doesn't have to be the very first ingredient, but it needs to be at least towards the top. Otherwise, you're really not getting a very high concentration of the things that are in that product that actually do good for your hair. So make sure you're checking the back of your bottles. You don't want to see the word sulfate or sterile alcohol anywhere in the first list of ingredients. You know, it can be, if there was a little alcohol like at the very end of your list of ingredients, I'm not going to freak out over that, and neither should you. But if it's the second, third, fourth thing from the top of the ingredients list, you shouldn't be using it anymore because it's not good for your hair. It dries it out. I also wanted to show you guys how to use the curling wand, and then we'll be done. Again, I turn this baby down all the way. Whenever you're using a curling wand, heat protectant, of course, and then I really like this Hold Me Tight. It's something you can spray onto your hair that's a very, very light hold. It's the same one that I used when I was diffusing the cool air into Bonnie's hair, just for a little bit of extra hold. Remember though, if you have finer, straighter, like silkier feeling hair, usually the less product, the better. I would not recommend you use a ton of product in your hair. It's just gonna weigh it down. I personally only use a leave-in conditioner and a heat protectant. That's all I use typically. If I want extra volume, I use my awapui spray, but my hair is so light that I don't even really need to use that if I have a good blow dryer that I'm working with and a good round brush. I really don't even need that stuff. So I'm not gonna sit here and try to sell you a bunch of crap because you don't need it. And typically the more stuff you put into your hair, the less it's able to breathe, and it really weighs it down. So it doesn't really do you the benefit that it's supposed to say on the bottle. So if I want anything from you guys, it is to use a good sulfate-free shampoo, a good moisturizing conditioner if possible. Check your labels. You want to make sure there's not any sterile alcohol in the first, chunk of ingredients. Make sure real ingredients are listed towards the top. Check the pHs on your pH strips. Make sure that your shampoo's pH is living between that 4.5. It could even be as high as like a 6.5 if you needed that extra acidity, but try to use shampoo that's around the same pH that hair lives at, which is 4.5 to 5.5. you can check it on a pH strip. If the shampoo in your shower is the same pH as the dish soap that you're using to clean your dishes with, throw it away. You don't need that in your life. That's negativity, people. Okay, I'm going to show you how to use my wand. And we're going to pretend like I curled my whole head because I don't think everybody wants to sit here and watch me do that. But I'm going to show you on each side of my head so that you can see how I hold the wand, because a lot of people struggle with that. So say I'm to the very top section of my hair. Say I've already curled all of this. I'm going to hold my wand the same exact way on the right side, no matter if I'm starting at the nape or if I'm all the way to the top. So I just want you guys to see this. I would hold my wand so that the barrel end is up, or I'm sorry, the handle end is up and the barrel end is down. You want to wrap once and a half if you have medium length hair, maybe even a third time if your hair is longer. If you want it to be higher up, you can roll it to the top. But personally, I like to stay right around the middle part. Do not put this on your ends. It's not necessary, because at the very end, you slide it to the ends. And it'll give you this really nice, loose curl that looks like a flat iron curl, because it's a 1-inch barrel. So you can see that. I'll do one more. Our sections should be about as wide as the curling iron is. Again, this is your section determiner, the width of your barrel. Okay, so I come in, middle of my hair, I loop once, twice. If my hair was any shorter than it is right now, I would only do 1.5, and I stay in the middle. Hold it for like a couple seconds, and then I pull down, releasing that end. See? You do not need to curl your ends, people, especially if you round brush them. Okay, so now that I've got that side, you kind of understand how I hold the barrel. I'm going to do my left side now. When I move to my left side, same rules apply. My sections need to be about as wide as my barrel is. Only this time, so on this side I held it this way. On this side, I loop around the back of my head, because typically we want these first two sections to go away from our faces. If you want one side to go forward, like say you have a really hard part to the right, you could do a hard part this way and have this one section go forward, then you would just hold it in front. But I like both of my sections to go back. So I would loop this behind, so my elbow is up, and I would take to the middle there, go once, twice. Hold, hold, hold. And now we're going to pull through the ends, being careful not to burn your finger. They make these little Michael Jackson gloves that are pretty handy. But so there you go. I'll do one more. So again, elbow up, come around the back, once, twice. Pull down through the ends. Okie dokie, smokies. So that's it. That's the end of my tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got some helpful tips. If you are going to use the wand to curl your hair at all, another little trick I like to use is to do all the curls first. Do not put your fingers through them until they've completely cooled down. Once they've cooled down all the way, that's when you can use a finishing spray if you choose to. But before you use your finishing spray, either take your clean fingers, because if you use oily makeup covered fingers like you just did your foundation with, you're going to pull that foundation all through your hair. So you can use a nice wide tooth comb or clean fingers, and just from the middle to the ends, kind of rake it on through. And you can loosen those curls up a little bit if you want to. Just a smidge. And we'll pretend this is all curled, because I don't want you guys to have to watch me do all of that. And then at that point, spray her down. Another thing, if you like more separated curls, you can either use a pomade, just a teeny tiny bit, like a pea size. Only put it through the middle to the ends of your fingers. So if I had some pomade, I would put that little P right there and I would work it through my fingers. The warmth from your body helps to soften it. That's why we rub back and forth like that. Take those fingers and just do like this. Do not touch your scalp or you'll get greasy hair, but just through the middle to the ends. That's something you could do with pomade, or you can use a working spray like this. And that's what a working spray is for. It's to help separate the curls out. So if you're looking for a more beachy look or more separated waves, that would be a way to achieve it. If you guys have any questions, I guess just comment below and I'll try to keep an eye on it tonight and answer any of your questions. Otherwise, I think that's all I have to tell you guys about. There was another pre-dry method that I did not demonstrate, and that was the flat wrap method. The reason I didn't demonstrate it is because not a whole lot of people will need to use it. However, if, say, you have a short bob, for example, and you want a lot more volume, like through this area of your head, then when you're pre-drying, instead of going in diagonal sections, you could actually, so let's pretend this is still wet. This is the last thing I want to cover, I promise. Okay. So pretend this is wet, and this is still wet. So instead of coming in and taking it in diagonal sections forward and backwards, for extra volume, you can take horizontal sections and take them over to the opposite side. So instead of coming this way, we could take a horizontal section and go this way. And go rub, rub, rub this way. Rub, rub, rub. Same rule for the back. So like when I got to the back, I could take it straight forward all the way down to where the nape is. So all the way down to here. You guys see that? I go all the way down to there. So instead of only over directing the very top section, your halo section forward, you could choose to over direct everything above the nape completely to the opposite direction of where the hair will fall. So like my hair is falling this way on this side, so I would take everything this way and dry it, pre-dry it that way. That is for maximum volume. So, and I have really fine hair and I don't even feel the need to have maximum volume. So the only person that I can really think of that would benefit from that would be someone with even finer hair than I have. Someone like you, Mom, you could use it. That would be how I would have you pre-dry your hair. So Mom, if you're watching this, you can use the flat wrap method. And again, just wherever the hair is going to fall, you want to take it to the opposite direction. So when you're pre-drying, starting top to bottom, you would pre-dry everything this way on this side, this way on that side, and the back all the way to the nape. You could start here and make your way all the way down to the nape, would come completely forward. That's how I would do it if I had really, really fine hair. So I hope you guys enjoyed my tutorial. And again, if you have any questions, just comment below and I'll try to answer them. Merry Christmas, you guys. I really appreciate your business. Love you.